Can you recall anything? Can you remember something you learned by accident? And or would you like to share maybe an instance where experiments you did not go according to your original plan? So you can unmute or you could put your messages in the chat box. Olga Martin, I'm putting you on the hot seat to feel the silence. Are you able to remember
All right.
can you remember something you learned by accident?
Yeah, a lot. I'm trying to pinpoint actually which one. But I
I mean,
think,
it doesn't have to be related to, I mean, science per se, but anything.
sorry, go
It's,
on.
I mean, anything whatsoever, be it
Okay.
science related or not science related, just anything that you learned by accident.
And then I stumbled on PowerPoint. That was the first time I learned design. Just from playing, I learned something serious. That was the
Wow,
earliest example I can remember. Yeah.
great. So what did you actually set out to do?
Games. I was looking for a game to play. Just video games. There was no light. There was a charged laptop. And then I found
Oh,
it and I started playing around. I think PowerPoint has these animations and slideshow then. So from that,
yeah.
one thing led to the other. And I just created a file, saved over time. It's not something that happened within a day. So when I'm
Okay.
bored, I just tend to learn things like that.
But it set you on the path to do that.
Yes.
Wow, that's great. That's really, really great. Sorry, I forgot to start the recording, but I can see someone is recording. I'm not sure who, but that's great. So would anyone, let me point to someone else. Oga Nasir, Oga Nasiruddin. Can you think of I mean, anything whatsoever that you learned by accident? You can also put it in the chat box. Someone said hippocampus. All right. Someone has put in the meeting chat something I learned by accident, not science related though, was when I knew you can change your streaks logo on Snapchat. Wow, that's interesting. That's from O'Brien Obed. Great. Thank you for sharing. I'm waiting for more people to share as well. Oga Wealth. Hi, Wealth. Are you able to speak? All right. All right. Great.
Can you
Okay, I think
I'll,
Olamide's hand is
there'll
raised.
be a hand raised, yeah.
oh, sorry. I missed that. Please, kindly unmute Olamide and share.
Okay, good evening everyone. I think
Good
something
evening.
I learned by accident was when I was working on like kind of researching about, that was during the pandemic where I was working, a company where I was working at, and we wanted to kind of find a formula to making hand sanitizers. So what happened was that we already had like the major ingredients to mix, or like to get a formula. I wanted to get a formula that would work.
Hello. I think we've lost you there. Can anyone hear her? Am I the only one that can't hear her?
No,
No,
I
I
don't.
think
I
it's
don't
a network.
feel on the
Can hear.
call.
I can't hear her
Sorry.
anymore.
Oh, sorry about that. Hopefully, you'll be able to, you should be able to join in and and complete her story. She already gave us the hook during the pandemic, and we're like, huh, yeah, ready to listen. Anyone else in the meantime? Guys, I have lots of slides, but it's an open discussion, so it should be a
Oh,
two-way street.
I'm so sorry. My network booted me out.
That's fine.
Oh,
Please
I should
continue.
still continue. Okay.
Yeah, please do.
So
During
yes.
the
So as
pandemic.
I was saying, yes, during the pandemic, and we wanted to make hand sanitizers, and we're looking for a formula for the hand sanitizer. So we kind of did different research combination of the major ingredients that we had. So what happened was that we weren't getting it right, or the mixture that we made was not just forming right and all of those things. So we tried different methods just to get the perfect one that we can commercialize and sell to people during that period. So what happened was that I was supposed to go throw out the results, throw like throw them away. And by the time I started washing off what we mixed that did not form, I noticed that as I was washing my hands off, was the clear hand sanitizer mixture we were looking for formed right as I was washing my hands. So I was kind of shocked. I observed that and looked closely and tried to do that again, and it was clear, not cloudy. And so I had to run back to the lab to meet others and let them know that something just happened right now. And they asked what did I notice, and I told them that upon addition of water in a particular manner, um the hand sanitizer was clear and it formed the gel properly and not like cloudy or scattered. So that was how we discovered the formula, and we started producing hand sanitizers, teaching other people to make them too, and I mean distributing to different locations all over Nigeria. So
Wow, that's great.
that was what I discovered by mistake.
That's lovely. And it's quite related to our topic as well. Thank you so much for sharing, Olamide. Malam Nasiruddin said something I learned by accident is playing drum. Wow, that's quite interesting. Quite interesting. So, I would continue now, and I would like to, set the scene by sharing reminding us of some historical accidental discoveries. So, quite a number of us are familiar with Sir Alexander Fleming, who discovered penicillin. And it occurred by accident because uh, the his culture, his bacterial culture, got contaminated by a mold called penicillia. And but he was observant enough to observe that there was a zone of inhibited growth. There was a zone of clear inhibition around the mold. So he thought, okay, what could be causing this? Perhaps there is something in the penicillium, there's something the mold produces or something about the mold that inhibits the growth of bacteria around it. And later in the future, that compound was later found out to be penicillin. And you can imagine, how much, how that breakthrough has led to several other big breakthroughs. Another one I would also like to mention is an instance where the side effect of a drug became the main effect of the drug. The instance where two researchers, Simon Campbell and David Roberts, who worked with Pfizer, they recruited patients for a clinical trial to test a drug. And the code name then was UK 92 480 to treat high blood pressure. But the drug was not effective. So, they had to discontinue the trial. But they noticed something peculiar, and that was some male patients in the trial did not want to return their remaining pills. So they inquired to find out why, what the case was. And many of them, mentioned that, oh, since they started taking the drugs, their sex lives had improved dramatically. So they thought about, okay, what is going on here? And another trial was conducted for erectile dysfunction, and I mean, the drug passed. So now everybody is familiar. Most people are familiar with Viagra, but it was discovered by accident. Someone mentioned Via problem. Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. So another discovery, in the year 1906, in Battle Creek Sanitarium, Michigan, there was a gentleman, Will Kate, and he was in charge of assisting. His brother was a medical doctor, and he was in charge of assisting with the diets of the patients. So usually he would boil wheat, allow it to sit for a little while, roll it into dough, and bake it. But for some reason, he left the wheat, the boiled wheat sitting for longer than usual before rolling it into dough. And he observed that the dough was flaky, but out of curiosity, he felt like, you know what, I'll just bake it anyway and see what happens. Now, upon baking it, it came out as a crunchy, flaky snack that was very loved by the patients. And the last name of Keith was Kellogg's. I didn't want to give that out early enough. And that's how we got conflicts. So that was also an accidental discovery. Another one was another discovery in the year 1853 in Moon's Lake House near Saratoga Springs, New York. There was a gentleman called George Crumb. And people would stay, they would lodge there, they would lodge at the house. But there was a particular customer that just kept complaining about the food that he was giving them, that is the potato, always complaining that the potato was too thick and soggy. And he got so annoyed, and in he wanted to out of frustration, he wanted to pay back the customer in his own coin, and he cut this potato, he sliced the potato so thin that it could not be eaten by a fork. But to his surprise, the customer loved it, and people loved it so much that it became a regular on the menu, and that was Saratoga chips. It made a company, and it was called Saratoga chips, and that was how we got potato chips. So that's another invention. So another accidental discovery was in John Hopkins University. So there was a gentleman, Constantine Fahlberg, who was studying coal and tar for alternative uses. But for some reason, when he left the office or when he left the lab, as the case may be that day, he forgot to wash his hands. I mean, that's poor hygiene, right? And he got home, he was going to eat, still he didn't wash his hands before dinner. His wife served him rolls, but he observed that the rolls that he was eating were, much sweeter than he had ever tasted before. He inquired from his wife if she had tried a new recipe, but she said no, that it's the same old. So while trying to figure out what happened, he remembered that his hands were not washed before dinner. So he went back to his office in search of that secret ingredient. He conducted more tests on the strange sugary substance. And at the end of the day, he came up with that was how saccharin was discovered. So which is a potent sweetener. Now, a personal accidental discovery about during my internship in year 2014 at the Department of Pharmaceutical Chemistry of Obafemi Awolowo University. So my supervisor he had conducted an experiment, conducted a study where he had isolated a compound from the fruits of Mondia white. But the compound was, the amount that was isolated was so small. It was so small that, to do multiple tests and things like that, we needed to synthesize it. So I was actively involved as part of my project. I synthesized the compound, which was just a one-pot synthesis of parapentyl phenyl benzoate. But while synthesizing this compound, I started yawning. My head was dropping, but I didn't want my supervisor to know because I felt ashamed. I mean, you are in the lab, you shouldn't be sleeping in the lab. But to my surprise, my supervisor then, Dr. BJ Taiwo, he was yawning as well. And he said, I mean, he made a remark that he's feeling sleepy all of a sudden each time he comes into the lab. That bolstered my confidence to mention that I'm also feeling sleepy. So, I mean, the next thing we thought about was, could it be this compound that is, I mean, this compound we are synthesizing, could it be the one making us feel sleepy? So, some tests were conducted, animal studies were conducted, in vitro, in silico studies were also conducted. And it was discovered that the drug has it's it binds to GABA amino butyric A receptors, and the binding affinity is comparable to diazepam. So that was a personal accidental discovery for me. So I would like to turn I mean, give the mic back to you guys for you people to unmute and share. Are there, I would like us to discuss, I would like us to to discuss, can you observe any trends from things we can learn from all these unexpected experiences? I mean, these stories that has been related. Can we, I would like us to see, can we, uh, what trends can you pick? Please, you can put that in the, you can drop that in the chat, or you can unmute to speak. Though I would prefer you unmute to speak. Yes, someone has mentioned observations, curiosity. Correct. Thank you very much, Esther Folorenshaw. Curiosity and observation, keen observation. Good. Any other trends? Time to call people. So Esther mentioned bad habits. Wow. Sometimes bad habits pays. Interesting. Well, if it doesn't kill first. Yeah, Love Jacob said attention to details. True. Thank you very much for that. Ruth Odoye mentioned in science, don't dismiss any results or happening. Thank you very much. That's very true. Martin mentioned attention. Yes. Elizabeth Sonyaolu says asking the right questions. True. That's great. Thank you very much for thanks for adding to the discourse. Nasiruddin mentioned beginner's luck, like the saccharin. Thank you very much for that. Adidolapo Alakinde mentions that nothing is too stupid to dismiss. That's very correct. Abdulafiz Akinloye writes, all this wahala began with the apple and music. Well, that's interesting. And O'Brien Obed says, learning curve and attention to key details. True. Thank you very much. Joshua says, paying attention to details. Yes. So thank you very much. Root 30. Sometimes we need to let nature and make and mistakes play out. Sometimes we need to let nature and mistakes play out. It opens new doors. I couldn't agree more. Thank you very much for that. So I also put a few points together. Like if you look at each of the stories, you would observe that there was keen observation, someone observing something unusual. Something unusual has happened, but someone is observant enough to to identify that this is a misnomer, and to try to really understand what is going on and what could be the cause. And you also see with Neil with Sir and Fleming and in many other cases, sometimes when something happens, you are not really sure what's going on, but you make new hypotheses. Oh, could it be that the penicillin, the contaminant, is producing something that is killing the bacteria around? That's an hypothesis. Uh, could it be that, oh, this compound is what is making us feel drowsy, as I experienced? Oh, could it be that the compound I was working with, the sugary compound, was is what is making the roll I'm eating sweeter, and so on and so forth. So, and as well, another thing that is also very important is taking notes, being observant, documentation. Because I mean, if for instance you stumble upon a compound by mistake, oh, you left the dough, I mean, the boiled wheat longer before you rolled it into dough. If you miss that critical element of leaving it longer than usual, then it might be difficult to really replicate what has been done. So it's usually also very important to also take note, to be observant of what changed from the usual that gave this accidental discovery. Then, as has also been alluded to, it's also nice to leave some room for spontaneity, to leave room for accident. Although ethical responsibility, you still have to be ethically responsible and ensure that we put safety first. So, with at least if it's even if it's difficult for us to always leave room for accidents, because we plan our experiments as much as possible, we try to stick to the protocol as much as possible and things like that. But as much as possible as well, we should at least position ourselves to learn from accidents when they do occur. So, uh, now it's your turn to share in the comment box any famous accidental discovery. I mean, uh the any accidental discovery that you find particularly interesting. I'm hoping someone would unmute and share. And you could also type in the comment box as well. Interesting. Esther Falonisho has raised a very important point, and which is, have there been negative accidental discoveries? Hmm. I believe they are abound, especially when we talk about maybe like accidents. Uh, well, when I say like traffic accidents now, and many other things. I think I think the Chernobyl explosion is also like a negative accident as well. Knowing that, okay, if something overeats or if it's not well contained, if the situation are not properly controlled, you could have an explosion. I but I think for the most part, the negative accidents are the ones that we are usually, uh, I mean, they are the ones that we often pay closer attention to. But the sad part about negative uh, accidental discoveries, I fear, is that most times people wouldn't want to replicate them. So unlike the positive accidental discoveries where people would want to, okay, think about, oh, this happened. Okay, so let me try and do it again and see, is this what really causes it? But for negative accidental discoveries, it might be very difficult ethically to deliberately try to replicate what you know might be negative, especially if it's, I mean, if depending on the skill anyway. So, okay, please go ahead, Esther Falarisha. the kind of
Yeah,
views and share.
I just wanted to chip in for the negative discoveries, and I quite agree with the fact that because of ethics, especially if it's something that could affect or damage life, most people would not want to replicate. But I saw Martin put something about microwave and something, but I just remembered that sometimes, um they will say don't put foil in the microwave because it would catch fire or something. So I'm sure somebody also just did it and it happened. So, but I know sometimes I just wanted to, I'll be like, let me try if this thing would actually work. I know it's dangerous, and I've tried it once or twice and it actually caught fire. So, but I was just saying, oh, since we're talking about accidental discoveries, there are also things that people just stumbled upon that were bad and just helped us too. So that's why I mentioned it. But thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. I hope when you were putting the foil in the microwave, you had your extinguisher, your fire extinguisher at hand.
Yes, but then it was just like 2 seconds, that kind of thing. So I didn't, yeah.
I think it's quite interesting that you should mention the foil in the microwave, because I think one of the things I actually read about it is perhaps it's if I'm not saying you should try to do this now, but I think it is when the foil is wrinkled that it kind of catches fire. If it is smooth, it might not. But I mean, it might be difficult to really have a very smooth foil paper across food. I mean, without it being wrinkled. So I mean, it's yeah. So it might be difficult to really do
Okay, I'm
that.
not trying that one, Sha.
So would any other person also like to share any accidental discovery that I mean you find particularly interesting? It might be famous or not. Okay, so someone mentioned cloning. Someone has mentioned microwave oven and dynamite. Yes. So the interesting thing about the microwave oven was someone had the chocolate in his pocket. Then you observed that the chocolate had melted while it was working on, I mean, something within the waves. Then later he tried to, put conduct the wave in such a way that it's limited into a box. And I think the very first thing that's they cooked with microwave was popcorn, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure. But yes, so thank you very much for sharing. Uh, the dynamite, interestingly, from what I read, was that the explosive actually existed, but they were finding it difficult to actually find a way to actually keep it safe before, I mean, the incendiary substance. They were finding it hard to find like a substance or a way to protect it and to detonate it only when they want to detonate it. But they also discovered the agents through which that can actually absorb the incendiary device, which is I think nitroglycerin. They found it by accident. So thank you for sharing. Nasiruddin mentioned cloning. Elizabeth Sanyolu mentions discovery of radioactivity. Thank you very much. Someone has mentioned Akin Loyes has mentioned what about unboiled egg in the microwave? Yes, I think it was also one of the things that people actually tried when at the inception of microwave they put an egg into the microwave and I mean it exploded. Someone has mentioned the discovery of Teflon and synthetic dyes. Yes. Thank you everyone for your contributions. There was actually quite a lot of the accidental discoveries in that I came across, but in the interest of time, I just thought to not to list everything. Yes, someone has mentioned Olamide mentioned PCR. Great. And it's quite interesting when you read the stories about each of these accidental inventions because, I mean, it takes as the quotes I showed at the beginning, as it said, I mean, it's usually very important that the mind is prepared and ready to take advantage of that chance discovery. So it's also quite interesting that for many of us, our everyday use of computer, we learn many things by accident. So can someone tell me in the comment section the difference, I mean, what Control J does on Microsoft Word and what Control H does? Or you can unmute and share.
Control H will find and replace.
Correct. Control H would find and replace. While Control J, how about Control J, Martin?
Justify.
Yeah, Control J would justify. But it's quite interesting because J and H are very close. I mean, they on the keyboard, you have them
Control
side
J
by
is
side.
justify.
Yes, thank you very much. Someone has also put that into the chat box. Control J, it justifies what has been typed. The edges makes it very smooth and straight. So you can imagine someone wanting to press Control J and making a mistake and pressing Control H. Then all of a sudden they realize, oh, now they have this dialog box, this small window that tells them, oh, it's clearly obvious that you can use it to replace words. And for me, particularly, I mean, that's one of the things that happens. So many times when I'm doing something on the system, I'm working on the computer, I make a mistake, but to press something, whereas I intend to do something else. But oftentimes when that happens, I mean, you take a pause like, oh, what just happened? Okay, what did I wanted to press? What did I press? Oh, so if I press this is what it does. Okay, and you keep it in mind. And when next you need that functionality, then you know what to do. And this is something that I mean. So I'm mentioning this because it might seem small, but it's also a form of accidental discovery. And for many people, I imagine this is something that happens to quite a lot of us. Yes, Martin has mentioned that virtually all the shortcuts that he knows are accidental. Yeah, so true. Uh, Akinloye mentions that although that's what came by default, I can change the control function keys. Yes, thanks for adding that. Esther Fernandez mentioned that she can relate to this. It happens with shift and control. True. Sometimes you want to press shift and a letter, then you make a mistake and you press control and that letter, then you realize, oh, it's something different. So this is just to highlight to us that many of us, I mean, in our day-to-day lives, we come upon accidental discoveries. So the next thing now is a quick discussion. So I'd like to present to us an hypothetical scenario. So imagine a student should get a solution with a blue-black coloration after taking the following steps. Put 10 grams of A in a flask, add 10 ml of B to A, keep flask away from sunlight. Now, if the student was supposed to get a blue-black coloration, what do you think could have gone wrong if the student got a silver coloration? Now, this is just, I mean, it's just words. So there's nothing particularly scientific, I mean, real about this scenario. What I just want us to think, I mean, what I just want us to dissect is what could have gone wrong. Not necessarily, oh, what gives a silver coloration or what gives a blue-black coloration. But that's not the case in this matter. I just want us to look at the steps that we actually intended and what do you think could have changed? Yes, someone said timing. Good. Uh, Esther mentioned timing. It's possible, yes. Gloria Olaleye says the flax might have been exposed to sunlight. True. Uh, Oluwashemilogo says there could have been wrong measurements. Yes. And that's quite interesting because yes, it could have been instead of maybe 10 milligram, sorry, 10 gram. I mean, the amount of A in the flask might have been more than 10 gram or less than 10 gram. Uh, Wrong measurement could also have been that, okay, more B was measured, maybe 15 or 50 mils instead of 10 mils, or maybe less, maybe 5 mils instead of 10 mils. Yes. Someone mentioned, Nasiruddin mentioned, yeah, there could have been exposure to sunlight. Yes, keeping in mind that the flask should have been kept away from sunlight. Yes, quite interesting. Olamide says that A could have been added to B. Instead of adding B to A, perhaps B was added to A. That's quite interesting. And I quite agree. Wrong, Chinaza says wrong measurements. That's what I think. Or maybe A to B instead of B to A. Yes, true. Nasiruddin, quite interesting. Expired materials. Yeah, good. We are all thinking as scientists that we are. Thank you very much for this. Uh, hmm. Akiloyi mentions it's possible that the flask is contaminated. Very, very true. Very, very true. Faith says the flask could be coated with something that reacts with A and V. Yeah, that's ingenious. That's quite I like this thought. Yeah, thank you very much. Esther mentions that could a type of flask also react with the solution? Wow, I'm blown away by these suggestions. Uh, O'Brien, exposure to sunlight, A and B might have been contaminated. Uh, Elizabeth, wrong reagents. Very true. Very, very true. Well says perhaps you had the wrong reagent. Sinaza says, what if I didn't use a flask, but a plastic container? Hmm. So maybe something about the equipment in this case. Mislabeled materials in the first place. Good. Thank you very, very much. So, I mean, there are no right or wrong answers in this case, but it's just, I mean, this scenario was just put here for us to kind of think as the scientists that we are about what could have gone wrong. So usually science, I mean, as we know it, especially big chemistry, you have two things reacting under a particular set of parameters. So as scientists, we know that, I mean, there are multiple factors that affect whatever phenomenon, be it as it may. Take, for instance, the Beer-Lambert rule. It only applies at some concentrations when the concentration is very low. At some point, it doesn't apply anymore. So usually, multiple factors affect things. So you can imagine someone maybe looking at, let's say, uh, this law of volume is directly proportional to pressure. But someone could say, oh, but I mean, it was the same volume, but why am I not getting the same pressure? I mean, if they don't keep the temperature constant, the temperature could also affect it. So that is how we should all think. I mean, in that usually if every if every factor in two experiments are kept exactly the same, then one would expect that the results should be reproducible. But if one factor, I mean, particularly if that factor is significant, if it changes, in this case, it could be, oh, maybe the wrong measurement, it could be, oh, the flask is contaminated in one experiment, but it was not contaminated in another experiment. It could be that, oh, uh, the the solution was not kept away from sunlight. It could be the order of addition of, I mean, someone mentioned initially about, I think that was Olamide, about uh, making a formula for hand wash. An interesting thing about making formulations is it's not only about the amount of the ingredients that you add together. It's also very important the I mean the stepwise the stepwise addition. What you add first, what you put next, and I mean that could also affect the final product that you get. So it's important to anytime. experiments don't go right, I mean, don't go the way we actually expect or plan it to, especially maybe we are trying to reproduce an experiment, it's important for us to look closely at all the factors, consider them carefully, and try to tease them apart to try and get a sense of what could have changed and how could that have affected our experiments. Thank you very much. So, Akinlo, you mentioned that someone must have added water to acid instead of the other way around. Thank you very much for adding that. So, mistakes in the lab, particularly undergraduate lab. So, this is something I would also like to touch upon. So, I wonder if anybody would like to share, if you have, are there instances you recall during undergrad or maybe even during masters when you didn't get the results that you were expecting, the results in the textbook? I'm hoping someone would share. And anyone recall maybe a particular or peculiar mistake? I mean, or a peculiar experiment during the undergrad that didn't go according to plan?
Hello,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Yes, you can hear you loud and clear.
I was laughing as I saw this question now. Yeah, when we were doing this amino acid analysis in the lab, so the result I was supposed to be writing only precipitate, but I keep adding gelatinous. So I was busy writing gelatinous precipitate was formed, gelatinous precipitate was formed. So instead of me scoring 80/20, I ended up scoring 5/20.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. So there are a few shares in the chat. So Esther Falansha says, I can't remember fully, but there was a salt experiment that didn't precipitate. Meanwhile, textbook said it should. Gloria Laleye mentions that color change during titration is always somehow, always one kind. And someone has had it, especially with phenolphthalein. Interesting. Someone has also added, sometimes they will say yellow and you would see orange. Is orange and yellow the same? Well, quite interesting. Chinaza mentions that I wanted to grow bacteria and was somehow finding it difficult to. In my mind, is it not simple culturing? Apparently, my inoculating loop was too hot and was killing the bacteria. Wow, that's quite interesting. And I really, really like the fact that, I mean, you took us around the loop. I mean, you told us what the problem was and what was actually going on. Great. Thank you for sharing that. Oluwashemilogo mentions that the bacterial cellulose my colleagues and I produced was meant to be weighed on the 7th day, which was Saturday, but my colleagues and I didn't wait till the 9th day. Oh, yeah. So it's quite interesting. I mean, the experiences that many of us have had, particularly during in undergraduate lab. And I mentioned I'm trying to focus on undergraduate lab because for most part, for many of us, I mean, the amount of confidence we actually have during our undergraduate studies is usually much lower compared to our postgrad studies. And many times we find it difficult to be confident enough to stand by our results and try to really understand that, and to appreciate what could have gone wrong and explain that. So many times we feel tempted to write what we are not observing, but writing what we should be observing, just so we get the mark and we can move on. But it's quite interesting because, if we look back, this perhaps were, these were chance opportunities for us to discover things by accident. To understand, to further appreciate what could have been going wrong. Now, Chinaza has mentioned, beautifully, that the bacteria not growing, and the apparent reason was because the inoculating loop was too hot. So hot enough, enough to kill the bacteria, such that, I mean, she was actually by the time she was bringing it out of the culture media, it was actually sterile, so there was nothing to culture. Uh, Someone mentioned the phenolphthalein, and for the phenolphthalein, it could be that perhaps, I think I recall that usually when you are close to the end point, you are asked to add the solution from the burette, to add it slowly, to add it very, very, very slowly. And it's quite interesting because sometimes another thing you also have to do is you also have to shake the flask constantly, because sometimes you already have enough of the solution from the burette in the flask, but because it has not gone round, it's not homogeneous yet. You have not, the color change does not become apparent until you have added more than you want to. So, these are ways of perhaps further understanding, oh, what could have gone wrong and how we could have made it right. For the yellow coloration of the solution instead of orange, sometimes it could be that perhaps the amount of indicator, the drops of indicator that was added was maybe too much or too little. So that also affects the kind of the end points, the coloration of the end points that you get. But for most of us, because of the way the system is designed, many of us we don't feel confident enough to really state our results as they are, because that could also have been opportunities for us all to learn. What could have gone wrong? And I think it's also buttresses, the need for us. I would make an argument that perhaps if a student doesn't get the right, what they are supposed to get, but they are able to they are able to explain what could have gone wrong, perhaps they should get the full mark, or they should get something, something appreciable. Perhaps that could be one way to encourage students. So yes, part of what I had in mind when I was thinking about mistakes in undergraduate lab is titration, and I'm glad someone also mentioned it in the chat box. Yes, so Esther Folorenshaw, adding to the discourse, she said, "Fear won't even let you be curious. You just want to write what was expected and submit." Yes, that's true. True, but sad. It is sad, but very, very true for most of us. So, it's buttresses the point. They need to kind of engender confidence in students, particularly, in every student, but more importantly, in students in the scientific field. It's important for students to be confident with their results and to be able to stand by it and possibly explain what could have gone right or what could have gone wrong. And perhaps it could also be an opportunity for us to learn to identify maybe another factor that could affect the results, of the experiment. And that maybe there's a factor that has gone unnoticed for years because nobody paid attention to it or nobody made that mistake. But someone makes that mistake and gets something odd, we shouldn't be too quick to say, "Oh no, you got it wrong." Just go and point it away. Perhaps we should also spend a little more time to try to understand, okay, what could have gone wrong and why do we have something different? Why do we have a different result? Esther Adepoju mentions that analysis on raw material for the production of antibiotics was bringing out a different color. At the end of the day, we realized that the test tube was contaminated. Wow, contamination. The wahala that contamination would start, contamination would not solve it. Thank you very much for sharing, Esther. Faith mentions that my lecturer once told a student something along the lines of, this particular thing haven't been seen for so and so number of years. Go and redo that lab work. Yeah. So, I mean, it's quite I mean, for the most part, I understand and appreciate the need for conformity. I mean, for people to actually get what is expected. But I think perhaps one of the things we should also try to engender in students is curiosity. That, okay, this has gone wrong. What do you think could have led to this? Do you think, I mean, what do you think you did differently compared to others? Can you check, can you compare your notes with your colleagues and see what they did, what you did differently? I mean, things like that. Because who knows, perhaps that thing that had not been seen for so and so number of years is something that could actually be maybe of more benefit than what's I mean the usual results. Someone has made an admission here. I won't mention the name. I just want to copy the title value. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it can be very, very stressful. Someone has mentioned contamination from the students. I mean, it could be a serious challenge, especially in microbiology when you have contamination. And I recall that for our first lab in pharmaceutical microbiology, we were told to, I mean, dust our sleeve onto the agar, cough into it, shout into it, open one for a long period of time, and at the end of the day, that was all we did, and we cultured it. I mean, sorry, we incubated it, and for most of it, there was growth, and it was quite an interesting way to teach us about how, I mean, how things can get contaminated in the lab, and the importance of not talking while you have your agar plate open and things like that, when you have your media open. And actually it mentions as an intern I had to see and sign on your title value on your breath before I mark your lab reports. Maybe some of your students are here. Yeah, I try to encourage them to write their reports based on their title values, right or wrong. Thank you very much for your service to science. Oh, all right, quite an interesting admission. Mm, me, I was a student. Oh, thank you very much. Do you ever assign your title value? Ah, quite interesting. Thank you very much for giving us a laugh. All right, so the next thing is now trying to wrap up. I think it's uh one of the things I would also like us to take from this session is failure could be a teacher. I mean, failure has a lot to teach us, but one of the things we have to ask ourselves is, are we really paying the right attention? When things don't go according to plan, when I mean, when it feels like, oh, you didn't, why, I mean, you didn't get the color change you were expecting. Oh, the experiment that you failed the experiment. I mean, you are not getting any culture. Why? Oh, the experiment has failed because, I mean, and things like that. I think it's important for us to keep in mind that there's a lot we can learn when things don't go according to plan, when technically we would say, oh, the experiment or the study has failed. But perhaps there's a lot we can also learn from it about, oh, why things didn't go the way we expected. And there might even be more to learn from it. So I'm hoping that we can continue sharing on the WhatsApp group stories of when we learned from things that did not go right. And also wrapping up, part of the things we've also picked is the importance of keen observation as scientists. And it's important to also have a present to have a present, a good, an appreciable presence of mind, whatever we do, and documentation, taking notes, being observant. And it's also important for us to be able to rationalize our results, to understand, I mean, when things don't go wrong, when things don't go the way we expect, to think about, okay, what could have gone wrong? What factor did I not, I mean, what factor was not kept constant between two experiments such that we are not getting I mean, we are not having the reproducible result that we expect. And perhaps sometimes when things don't go the way we want, I mean, there could be a potential commercial use for those accidental discoveries or those failures. For instance, there is the point of the sticky notes. The man who invented the sticky note, he wanted to make a gum. I mean, a very, very sticky gum. But he just kept making this substandard gum, if I mean if you could call it that. But later I mean he thought about, okay, of what could be the benefit of this. And he came up with the sticky note. And now we have sticky notes. And I mean, sticky notes has become part of uh part of the academic culture, to the extent that I mean, even online, you have sticky notes. I mean, you have sticky notes online. I mean, aside the physical sticky notes, you have something like that. I mean, kind of replicated in a way online on the computer. So perhaps we should keep an eye out for the mistakes that come about. Sometimes maybe it could be that, oh, you want to bake something and you forget to add a particular ingredient, and it comes out maybe exceptionally even better than you had planned. Or, oh, you would naturally bake something I think another thing to also keep in mind is sometimes maybe midway while preparing a recipe, you realize something has gone wrong. There was a mistake. Perhaps sometimes it's still worthwhile going ahead with the process till the end and seeing how it turns out at the final end. I mean, for the man who left the boiled wheat longer before rolling it into dough, if realized it was a bit flaky, but he still went ahead and baked it and was able to invent conflict. So who knows what you could discover. And I think it's also important for us to have confidence in failure because there's a lot to learn from it. So I would like to end with this quote from Sir Louis Pasteur that chance favors the prepared mind. It's a bit similar to the quote I started with. Thank you very much. So I don't know if anyone has any addition they would like to share. So you have the attendance has been posted in the chat box. So please try to complete the attendance for today's session. Oh, yes, please, Esther, you have the floor.
So
I can
this
see
is
your hand raised.
contribution. Yeah, it's just me asking you. So your slides for tonight, was it an accidental use of graphics or you purposely did it?
Well, I would say it was not, it was, I mean, do you mean the font type?
Yes, and even the way you structure it looked like what's those that made these early discoveries. It just makes it look like,
Yes.
oh, because we were talking about the accidental discoveries, maybe you just, oh, let's go back in time and let's use this retro kind of
Well,
font. Yes.
that's quite interesting.
It's very like, it's made
It
it
was not it was
resonate.
not deliberate. I wanted to try a different font type, but actually I didn't really think so the name of the font is Papyrus. So
Oh,
I think, I mean, that
you went
buttresses what
the
you mean.
point.
That I've been going back in time. Yes,
Of course, of
it's
course.
called papyrus, but it wasn't deliberate. I mean, I think it was accidental in the sense that, I mean, I didn't connect it to. I mean, let's going back in time. So that element, that part of it was accidental.
Yeah, that's fine. It just made it more like believable and everything just resonated. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. So Akele mentions risks are great in science, but I beg, do am jeje. Esther mentions that our take home is there should be a bit of confidence in failure. True. I totally agree with that. Uh, Genesis says, I wish our teachers told us most of these things. I could remember many times when my research findings went wrong and I worried a lot about it. And Walter has mentioned that too many accidents today. I think good accidents, I hope. And Faith mentions that the first time accidents sounds like fun. Yeah, sometimes they could be fun. Nasiruddin says accidents without damage. Promo hands at the end of this meeting. All right, so I would like to, I don't know, Welt, do you have any announcements? Or Martin, are there any announcements you'd like to make, please?
No announcements. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So Esther, I can see your hand raised. I don't know if it's from the initial. All right, it's down now. Thank you very much. So please, dear colleagues, the attendance has been put on the chat box again for those of us that are yet to fill it. Please, let's try to fill it as quickly as possible. And I mean, yes, this is the end of the presentation, but we can always continue the conversation in the WhatsApp group. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your time and thank you for your contribution. Thank you for making the session as interesting as it was.